I never imagined my son, Michael, would be the one to betray me. He had always been my pride and joy, the one who'd followed in my footsteps and carried the family name with pride. But it all changed one night when everything I worked for seemed to slip through my fingers. It started innocently enough. I'd been dealing with some health issues, and Michael insisted I move into his home for a while. "It's safer here, Dad," he'd said. "You don't have to worry about anything. Just relax." I should have known better. It wasn't until that evening that I began to feel the weight of his words. After dinner, he'd insisted I go to the basement to fetch something for him. "It's in the storage closet," he said, guiding me down the stairs. As I stepped into the dimly lit basement, the door slammed shut behind me and I heard the unmistakable click of the lock. I froze. My heart sank. I banged on the door, yelling for him, but all I heard was his laughter from upstairs. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of everything. You can rest," he called down, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. I tried not to panic, but the reality of it hit me hard. Michael wasn't just looking after me. He was locking me away. The longer I stayed in that basement, the more I realized the truth. This wasn't just about keeping me safe. This was about taking everything I had worked for, my house, my savings, the legacy I was supposed to pass on. Hours passed, but I couldn't escape. My body ached, my hands were sore from pounding on the door. The basement was cold, and I had no way of knowing if Michael had any intention of letting me out. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a deliberate act. Finally, I heard the footsteps. Michael opened the door with a forced smile on his face. "Everything all right down here, Dad?" he asked, his voice far too casual for what he had just done. "Why, Michael?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "What are you doing?" He looked at me, his eyes cold and distant. "I'm just making sure you don't get in the way," he said. "You've had your time. Now it's mine." I could feel the blood rush to my head. My son had been planning this for weeks. All the smiles, all the promises were a facade. Michael wasn't just after my property. He was after everything I'd worked for, my business, my legacy. He'd never cared about me, not truly. "Let me out, Michael," I said, my voice low and dangerous, but he just shook his head. "No, you'll stay here until I'm done." I knew then that I had to act fast. There was no telling what he might do next. The man I'd trusted most in this world had just shown me his true colors. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I would get out, and I would stop him. I sat in that basement, trying to calm my breathing. The cold concrete floor beneath me felt like ice against my skin, and the flickering light above did nothing to ease the dread gnawing at my insides. I could hear Michael's footsteps echoing upstairs. Knowing that he was moving freely while I was locked away like an animal in a cage, I tried not to panic, telling myself that if I kept my head, I'd find a way out. But the reality of my situation was suffocating. I had trusted my son with everything, my love, my time, my fortune, and now he had betrayed me, not just with a locked door, but with his entire plan. How had it come to this? Michael had always been the golden boy, charming, smooth, always with a smile ready to win over anyone in the room. But underneath that charm, I began to realize, was a deep, calculating darkness. As I sat there, my mind raced through the last few months. Michael had been acting strange. He'd pushed for me to move in with him, saying it would be easier for me with my health problems. But looking back, I could see it now. It wasn't about helping me. It was about taking control of everything I owned, everything I had worked for. I thought of the business, the one I'd built from the ground up. I thought of the house, the one I'd bought when Michael was just a child. All of it was in my name. But Michael thought he could take it all from me, without a second thought. He'd planned it, carefully, quietly, but I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I had raised him, nurtured him, given him everything, and now he thought he could just take it all. I couldn't let that happen. Hours dragged on, and I lost track of time. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. The only thing I could do was think. That was when I heard it. The sound of keys. A light jingling noise, then the unmistakable click of the lock. Michael opened the door, his face a mask of indifference. "Ready to come out now, Dad?" he asked, his tone mocking. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking from sitting too long on the cold floor. The anger inside me surged, but I knew I had to be careful. There was more at stake now than just me. "I'm not going to stay down here forever, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you think you're doing?" He stepped back, blocking my path. "I'm taking what's mine, Dad," he said, eyes narrowing. "And when I'm done, there won't be a thing left for you." I felt a surge of panic, but I couldn't let him see it. "You don't get to take everything from me," I said, my voice growing stronger. He laughed, his cold chuckle echoing through the basement. "You really think you have a choice?" The door slammed shut behind me again, and I was locked back in that dark, suffocating space. But something had shifted inside me. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. I wasn't going to let Michael think he could get away with this. The hours passed, but this time I didn't sit idly by. I searched the basement. I had to find something, anything, that could help me escape. Then I saw it. There was a small window, tucked behind some old furniture. It was barely large enough for a person to fit through, but it was my only chance. I scrambled toward it, ignoring the pain in my joints and the dizziness from lack of food. The window was stuck, but with enough force, it finally gave way. I shoved it open, the cold night air rushing in like a wave of freedom. I squeezed through, feeling my body scrape against the rough edges of the window frame. My heart pounded in my chest as I landed in the backyard, breathless but determined. I was free. For now. But the real test was just beginning. The air outside was cold and the darkness of the night wrapped around me like a cloak, but I didn't care. I was free, for now. I had no idea where Michael had gone after locking me in the basement, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let him get away with this. I didn't stop running. My legs were shaky from being confined in that basement for so long, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins pushed me forward. I didn't know where I was heading at first, but instinct took over, leading me straight to the house. I didn't want to involve the police. Not yet. There was no need to make this mess public if I could avoid it. I had to handle this myself, get my life back. Michael had crossed a line, and it was up to me to make sure he paid for it. I approached the house cautiously. The lights were dim in the living room, and I could see shadows moving in the windows. Michael was home. Good. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and walked up to the front door. It was locked, of course, but I expected that. I had the spare key in my pocket, a key that Michael probably didn't even know about. I slipped it into the lock and turned. The door creaked open. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The furniture was just as it had been when I'd left. Nothing had been touched. But there was a certain heaviness in the air. The stillness felt wrong. I moved through the house slowly, listening for any sounds of movement. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock in the hallway, but nothing else. Michael was in the study, I assumed. That's where he spent most of his time, poring over his investments, making deals. As I neared the study, I heard the unmistakable sound of papers rustling. Then, Michael's voice, low and urgent. "I've got it," he muttered to himself. "Everything's in place. Dad won't even know what hit him." I froze. What was he talking about? I had no idea what he meant, but the cold sense of betrayal gnawed at me again. Whatever it was, it couldn't be good. I peeked around the corner of the study door and saw him, Michael, sitting at the desk with a stack of papers in front of him. The glow of the desk lamp lit up his face, casting sharp shadows. He didn't see me. He looked down at the papers, his fingers tracing over them like he was savoring a victory. And then I saw it. The one thing that made my blood run cold. The papers were deeds. Documents transferring ownership of my house, my business, everything I had worked for, straight into his name. I clenched my fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I had been right all along. Michael hadn't just locked me away to keep me out of his way. He'd done it to ensure I couldn't stop him from stealing everything. I stepped into the room, my voice low and steady. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Michael?" His head whipped around, his eyes widening in shock. He hadn't heard me approach. "Dad," he exclaimed, standing up abruptly, knocking a few papers off the desk in his panic. You shouldn't be here." "Too late for that," I said, my voice hard. "What are these, Michael?" "What have you done?" Michael scrambled, trying to gather the papers into a pile, but I was already reaching for them. I yanked them out of his hands and he didn't even try to stop me. The look in his eyes wasn't fear. It was frustration. Anger. "You don't understand," he said, his voice shaking. "I need this, Dad. I've worked for this. I can't keep living in your shadow. It's my time now." "You think this is your time?" I said, my voice rising. "You've stolen from me. You locked me away like an animal in the basement, and now you're trying to take everything I've built. You've lost your mind, Michael." He stepped back, his face reddening with rage. "I'm not losing anything. I'm taking what's mine. You're old, Dad. You've had your time. It's my turn." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't my son. This was a stranger. A man consumed by greed and jealousy. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done," I said, my voice steady. "You'll never get away with this." But Michael just laughed bitterly. "What can you do, huh? You've got nothing. No one will believe you over me. I'm the one with the power now." I stood there, looking at him, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. But something clicked in me then. I had one thing Michael didn't have. Something he never could. I had the truth. And the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. I stood there in the study, staring at Michael as he paced in front of me, his face flushed with anger. His words were meaningless now, lost in the storm of realization that had been building inside me. This wasn't just a fight for property or money. It was a fight for my dignity, for my family, for everything I had worked so hard to protect. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice cold and measured. "You've taken everything from me, Michael. But there's one thing you haven't taken, and you never will." Michael stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. "What's that?" He spat, clearly still convinced that he had won. "The truth," I said. "You may have locked me away, you may have signed those papers, but you haven't taken my ability to expose you for what you really are. A liar, a thief, a manipulator," he snorted, clearly dismissing me. "What are you going to do? Go to the police? Tell them your own son locked you in the basement? No one will believe you over me. I've covered all my tracks." I knew he was right about one thing. If I went to the authorities now, he would have the upper hand. He had all the evidence in his favor, the documents, the bank transfers, the false stories to back up his lies. But I wasn't going to play his game. I had a better plan. "I'm not going to the police," I said, my voice calm. "But I'll make sure everyone knows the truth, Michael. And I'll do it legally," he laughed bitterly. "Legally? You can't even get the law on your side. I own everything. The house, the business, everything you have. All you've got left is your pathetic attempt to try and fix what's already lost." I didn't answer him right away. I knew the clock was ticking. The longer I waited, the harder it would be to take back control. But I had one card left to play. "I'm going to contest the will," I said. Michael's face froze, his smirk faltering for a moment. "That annex clause you thought was hidden? It wasn't. It's been there all along." His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine fear flicker across his face. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, backing away from me. "I do," I said, stepping toward him slowly. "You didn't think I'd find out, did you? You thought you could lock me away, sign everything over to yourself, and no one would ever know. But I know what you did, Michael. I've got a lawyer, and we're going to expose everything." I could see the panic growing in his eyes. He had underestimated me. But now I had the upper hand. I knew the annex clause wasn't just some harmless addition to the will. It was a legal mechanism, a trap for anyone who tried to claim everything prematurely. The clause ensured that the estate wouldn't pass to anyone who manipulated or coerced the will in any way. It was brilliant. My father had known exactly what he was doing, and now it was my turn to turn the tables. Michael's face turned pale as the realization hit him. "You can't do this. You can't win." "You're wrong," I said, my voice firm. "I already have. You've already lost, Michael. You just don't know it yet." The truth was a weapon, and now I was armed with it. I turned and headed toward the door, but Michael's voice stopped me. "You think you got it all figured out?" He called after me, his tone desperate. "You think the law will save you? I'll make sure they never believe you. I'll destroy you first." I didn't look back. The fear in his voice wasn't a threat anymore. It was a sign of weakness. I walked out of the study, my heart pounding with the weight of what I had just set in motion. But this wasn't over. Far from it. The following days passed in a blur of legal consultations, sleepless nights, and tense phone calls. My plan to expose Michael's betrayal was coming together. I had a lawyer, James Caldwell, a sharp and seasoned man, who agreed that the annex clause in the will was our best hope to overturn everything Michael had done. I didn't have much, but I had the law on my side, and that was a weapon more powerful than anything Michael could throw at me. James was confident. "This clause, if enforced, means Michael can't legally inherit anything," he had told me, reviewing the will. "We can contest this on grounds of coercion, deceit. He locked you away, and we can prove it." But as confident as he sounded, I knew there was a fight ahead. Michael wouldn't go down without a struggle. He had always been the one to win, the one to charm his way out of trouble. And that terrified me. I didn't trust him anymore, not even a little bit. And as the days passed, I could see his frustration and desperation begin to show. He was becoming more erratic, more aggressive. His calls to me, his emails, all carried the same message. Give it up. Walk away. The last one was the worst. He sent it late at night after I'd left the lawyer's office. The subject line read, "You'll regret this." The message itself was short. "I'm done playing games, Dad. If you go through with this, I will destroy everything you care about. You think the courts will save you? You're wrong. You're not strong enough to take me on. I'm your son, and I will bury you if I have to. Don't make me do it." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read those words. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about Michael's need to dominate, to control. If he couldn't have the legacy, he would burn it to the ground. I showed the email to James. "This is serious," he said, his voice tight. "We're dealing with a man who's willing to do whatever it takes to win. Be careful." I hadn't expected it to come to this. Michael threatening to ruin my life entirely if I fought back. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Michael was afraid. He knew that if I exposed him, his carefully crafted life of lies would fall apart. But he wasn't going to let go without a fight. I had to be smart. I had to outplay him. The next morning, I received a call from an unexpected source. Sarah. She was my ex-wife, Michael's mother. We hadn't spoken in years, not since our divorce. But her voice on the other end of the line was sharp with urgency. "James," she said, her tone steady but edged with something I couldn't place. "I've been following what's been going on. You need to be careful. Michael's not just trying to steal from you. He's setting you up for something worse." I paused, confusion rising in my chest. "What do you mean? What's he planning?" "He's got connections, people who can erase your records, your business history. He's been working with a lawyer, someone shady. He's trying to bury you, make it impossible for you to prove anything in court." I felt the blood drain from my face. "How do you know this?" "I have my sources," she replied cryptically. "I'm not on his side anymore, but I know what he's capable of. You need to make sure you're ready. This is bigger than you think." Her words hit me like a punch. Michael had been planning this for longer than I'd realized. The inheritance, the deeds, everything. He hadn't just been after my wealth. He had been preparing for this legal battle for months, even years. He had built a network, made sure no trace of his wrongdoing was left behind. It wasn't just about proving he was lying, it was about proving he was trying to erase me from existence. I couldn't afford to be reckless. Michael had played his cards well, but I had to find a way to outsmart him before he could make his final move. I called James immediately. "We need to move quickly. I'm not just fighting for my inheritance. I'm fighting for my life. I need every document, every shred of evidence we can find. We need to dig deeper into Michael's connections, his lawyer, everything." James agreed. "We'll start digging into his past. He won't see it coming." But as we prepared for the next stage of our fight, I could feel the tension building. Michael wasn't just playing for the house anymore. He was playing for control over everything I had left, and he was willing to destroy me to get it. The court date was fast approaching, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me with every passing day. My lawyer, James, had spent countless hours combing through every document, every communication between Michael and his mysterious lawyer. He'd even uncovered something disturbing, a series of emails and phone calls that suggested Michael had been planning this for years, gathering evidence to bury me while framing me as the one who had been dishonest. James had warned me. He's not playing by the rules. He's preparing to turn the whole situation against you. The days leading up to the trial were filled with anxiety and unease. Michael had stopped calling, but I knew he was preparing for something big. He didn't want this to go to court. He wanted to finish it once and for all. I could sense his desperation growing with every passing minute. He was running out of time, and he knew it. I spent my nights reviewing the evidence, double-checking every piece of the puzzle we'd put together. I felt the weight of the years I had spent building my life and my business slowly slipping away. I had to win this. There was no other option. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, Michael made his move. It started with a simple letter, one that came in the mail on a cold Wednesday morning. I opened it, and my heart stopped. It was from Michael's lawyer demanding that I drop the case, threatening legal action if I didn't comply. The letter was filled with veiled threats, hinting that if I didn't step away from the fight, there would be consequences. It wasn't just a legal warning. It was a personal attack. The letter mentioned that Michael had uncovered something damaging from my past, something I had hoped would stay buried. It didn't name what it was, but the implications were clear. They were playing dirty, and they had something they thought would destroy me. I immediately showed the letter to James, who looked more concerned than I had ever seen him. "This is serious," he said, studying the document closely. "Michael's lawyer is trying to leverage something you're not prepared for. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us next." "I don't care what they think they know," I said, gritting my teeth. "They're not going to scare me off. I've worked too hard for this." But inside, I was shaken. Michael had uncovered something. I couldn't fathom what it was, but the fact that he was using it as a threat meant it was serious. The truth about me, or something close to it, was on the verge of being exposed. I spent the rest of the day trying to prepare for the worst. I revisited every mistake, every misstep I had made over the years, wondering what Michael could have found. I couldn't afford to lose now, not when I was so close to winning. The night before the court session, I received one final phone call. It was from Sarah. She had been quiet for days, but now she was speaking urgently. "James, you need to listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "Michael has a trump card. He's not bluffing. He's got something on you, something I didn't know about. You need to figure out what it is before it's too late." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, the panic creeping into my chest. "I don't know exactly what it is, but it's bad," she continued. "He's going to drop it at the trial. It's the only thing he's been hiding all this time. I don't think you're ready for what's coming." My mind raced. Michael had been preparing for this, and now he was going to reveal whatever secret he had to destroy me. I couldn't let him win. Not like this. I hung up the phone and turned to James, my hands shaking. "We have to figure out what he has on me. We have to find it before the trial. Whatever he's holding is going to destroy me if it comes out." James nodded, his expression grim. "I'll get to work. We're not losing this battle, but we need to act fast." The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. I had fought my entire life for everything I had, and now it seemed like I was about to lose it all because of a secret I couldn't even remember. Michael was going to make his final play, and I had no idea what it was. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had one last chance to turn this around. The courtroom was sterile and cold, filled with the quiet murmur of whispers as people settled into their seats. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, trying to steady my nerves. James sat beside me, his face stoic, but I could see the tension in his jaw. This was it, the culmination of everything I had worked for, and everything Michael had stolen. Michael was already sitting with his lawyer, his smug smile never leaving his face. He wore the same confident, arrogant look I had seen countless times over the years. He thought he had won. He thought his final play would crush me. But he had underestimated me. The judge, a woman in her late 50s, called the court to order. The room quieted as she went through the formalities. Her voice authoritative yet calm. "Mr. Caldwell, you may present your case," she said, turning to James. James stood, adjusting his tie, and faced the judge. "Your Honor, we are here today to contest the validity of the will left by the late Jonathan Harris, my client's father. The will in question contains an annex clause that, under the conditions of coercion and manipulation, renders the estate distribution null and void. My client was locked in a basement for hours by his son, Mr. Michael Harris, and prevented from exercising his legal right to contest the inheritance." I could feel the eyes of the courtroom on me, and I did my best to keep my expression neutral. This wasn't just about the money or the property anymore. It was about exposing Michael for the person he had become. Michael's lawyer, a sharp-looking man named Gregory Holt, stood up to respond. "Your Honor, we deny these allegations. Mr. Harris did not lock his father away in a basement. This is an attempt to invalidate a perfectly legal will. My client has followed all the necessary procedures and has the proper documentation to prove that Mr. Harris willingly relinquished any claim to the estate." Holt's voice was smooth, polished, but there was a certain desperation behind his words. He was trying to paint me as the villain, but I wasn't about to let him. James stepped forward, holding up a piece of paper. "We have evidence that contradicts Mr. Holt's claims," he said. "The annex clause in the will was deliberately included by the deceased to ensure that if any undue pressure was applied to the beneficiary, the estate would not be transferred. It's clear that Michael Harris took matters into his own hands when he locked his father away." The courtroom fell silent. Holt frowned but didn't object. He knew he had no choice but to let James proceed. I took a deep breath and glanced at Michael. His face was pale, his eyes darting back and forth nervously. For the first time, I saw a crack in his composure. He knew the annex clause was the turning point. He knew I had a chance to win. But just as the tide seemed to turn in my favor, Michael's lawyer pulled out his trump card, the one thing he had been holding back. "I'd like to submit new evidence into the record, Your Honor," Holt said, holding up a file. "We have discovered a series of financial transactions that suggest Mr. Harris may not be as innocent as he claims. We believe these transactions prove that Mr. Jonathan Harris intended to leave his son the estate, fully and without any reservations." I felt my heart drop. James tensed beside me, and I could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. The documents Holt was presenting were legitimate-looking, filled with bank statements and transfer records that appeared to show my father's intent to pass everything on to Michael. "Your Honor," Holt continued, "these financial transactions dating back months before Mr. Harris's death suggest that the estate was being funneled into Michael's account without any dispute. This undermines Mr. Caldwell's argument and should render any claims of coercion invalid." I felt my stomach churn. How had Michael been planning this? How had he hidden it all from me? James quickly stood. "Objection, Your Honor," he said. "These documents are irrelevant. We have proof that my client was under duress and could not make decisions freely. This new evidence is nothing more than a distraction." The judge nodded and motioned for James to present his counter-argument. "Your Honor," James said, his voice firm, "we are not disputing the validity of financial transactions, but the fact that Mr. Michael Harris manipulated the situation to his advantage. He locked his father away to prevent him from exercising his legal rights. This is not a question of inheritance, it's a question of justice." Michael shifted in his seat, clearly agitated. His mask of arrogance was slipping, and I saw his eyes flicker toward the door as if he was weighing his options. "Michael," I said, my voice cutting through the tension, "you thought you could take everything. You thought you could erase me. But the truth is bigger than your lies. The truth is coming out now and you can't stop it." For a moment he said nothing. Then, finally, he stood up, his hands shaking. "You don't understand," he said, his voice raw. "I needed this. I needed everything." The judge raised her hand, signaling him to sit down. "Mr. Harris, you will have the opportunity to speak later." I could feel the momentum building. Michael had exposed himself as nothing more than a man desperate to hold on to his ill-gotten gains. He had underestimated me. The truth was coming to light, and there was nothing he could do to stop it now. The courtroom was silent as the judge deliberated. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael sat with his hands clenched in his lap, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously between the judge and me. He had played his cards, thrown everything he had at me, and now it was all about to come to an end. The judge, a calm and measured woman, looked down at the stack of papers in front of her. She had been the one to hear all the arguments, all the evidence, and now it was time to render her decision. After reviewing all the evidence presented in this case, the judge began, her voice clear and authoritative, "It is clear that the annex clause in the will of Jonathan Harris was put in place to prevent coercion and manipulation. Mr. Michael Harris, your actions have been well documented. The lockup of your father, the manipulation of the estate, and the financial transactions, all of these have contributed to a case of undue influence. Therefore," the judge continued, "I declare that the annex clause is enforceable, and Mr. Michael Harris is disqualified from inheriting any portion of the estate. The distribution of the estate shall proceed according to the wishes of the deceased, with the rightful heir being Mr. Jonathan Harris's eldest child, Mr. James Harris." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced with a heavy sense of finality. The fight was over. Michael had lost. But as the judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack, sealing the decision, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. This wasn't just a victory. It was the end of a chapter, the end of my relationship with my son. He had taken everything from me, and I had fought to get it back, but at what cost? Michael stood up slowly, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He didn't speak, but I could see the rage simmering beneath the surface. He had thought he was invincible. He had thought he could manipulate his way to victory. But, in the end, it had all crumbled. "Mr. Harris," the judge said, her tone stern, "you will be required to return all assets you illegally transferred and face the legal consequences for your actions. This court finds that you attempted to defraud your own father for personal gain." Michael didn't respond. He just turned and walked out of the courtroom, his shoulders hunched in defeat. I watched him leave, feeling a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and relief. James stood beside me, a quiet smile on his face. "You did it," he said. "You fought for what was right." I nodded, but the weight of the moment hung heavily over me. I had won, yes, but the victory felt hollow. The man I had raised, the son I had trusted, was lost to me forever. As I left the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on what had led us to this point. Michael had always been the one who wanted everything. My approval, my wealth, my legacy. But in the end, he had destroyed all of it, including our bond. Walking out into the crisp air, I felt the weight of the decision lift, but it didn't fill the emptiness I now felt. The truth had come out and justice had been served. But I couldn't ignore the cost of that victory. I had learned a harsh lesson. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. And when they do, no amount of wealth or legacy can replace what is lost. As I drove home, the quiet echo of the courtroom still ringing in my ears, I realized that what mattered most wasn't what I had fought for, but the truth, the integrity of what was right, and that was worth more than any inheritance or fortune.